I just want to greet everybody who is watching this program, and I just wanted to say a couple of words of what we're doing here. So this is a conversation, the first of a series, I believe, with my good friend who lives far apart from me, or I live far apart from him, I don't know. And we have this chance to talk today, and I wanted to ask him a couple of questions. So his name is Jay Heck. He lives in Texas, in San Antonio. And the great thing that Jay has been doing ministry for men. He's been doing a lot of stuff for men, especially for fathers, for a number of years. And the thing which I like most, that we've done some things together. So there's something to remember.
It's very flat compared to Texas.
So, Jay, I have some questions.
Yeah.
And the first and the most important question is, I don't know if it is the most important, but I believe it's very important. So why are you doing this? Why are you doing this work, especially for the men?
I guess there's a couple of ways that I could answer that.
Of course.
One of them, and they're certainly related, is because this is my story, and I think the journey that we've walked is it's a gift. All of the pain, all of the confusion, all the questions that we had that ultimately led us. Hopefully, I think the invitation for humanity is that our questions are actually a gift that lead us to the place where we find God. And we don't typically like being in positions where we have a lot of questions and we don't have the answers.
Mm-hmm.
My big mistakes have been trying to figure those things out on my own. And I'm just so thankful for my journey, which had a little bit of exposure to God early on, but it was enough that when I came to some really difficult times and seasons in my life, I admit I tried figuring it out on my own, but ultimately I kind of looked up and I said, God, if you're there, and I don't really know if you're listening, I don't know if I'm even worthy to listen to. If you're willing to help, I need help. And that was maybe the wisest thing I've ever done, is to just start asking questions and to look up. And I didn't even know who I was addressing, but there was a rescue, and it didn't all come at once. It doesn't all come at once. It doesn't answer our questions. It didn't answer my question the way that I wanted. I wanted to instantly become a different kind of guy, instantly become happy, instantly become joyful, instantly have a good marriage, instantly become a better father. And I had a lot of disappointment that I suffered because of that. But every time God kept saying, look, you get a piece at a time, just a piece. And it was his kindness to keep me in a position of need and engagement with him. And over a short period of time, you don't necessarily see the fruit of it. It's good to be thankful for the rescue in the day, but then the next day you need him again and again and again. And so why am I doing what I'm doing? Because I have come to the place where I understand that as a man, there's a journey that very few men know that they're invited into, and that there is a kind of man that we were created to be, but you can't figure it out on your own. You simply cannot do it. And God used other men to provide some of the pieces. And so now my heart's desire, I would say that I can understand there's a piece of the strategy, of God's strategy for reaching men. And he kind of, I'm just painting a metaphor here, but he kind of brought me to the table, and he kind of put a map on the table and a blueprint. And I can hear him in my heart over the years saying, this is what a man is supposed to look like. This
Yeah.
is what he's supposed to bring. This was what I created him for. He's a masterpiece. But
Hmm.
I need you to help me help men see what you see. And I want to invite you in on this journey.
Yeah.
Um, and your story is really important because they just need somebody to follow. They need somebody to help explain how I meet them so that they don't get frustrated and give up and think that I don't care about them. Like, God's intimately involved. So I would say why I'm doing what I'm doing, it's
Hmm.
because I've been rescued. I've been on a journey, and I have gone from being one kind of man to literally being, as the New Testament describes, a new creation, a new kind of man. I'm absolutely still on a journey to becoming that. I still get
Yep.
frustrated. I still desperately need God. But I would have to say that I've been rescued, and now I share God's heart. I'm broken hearted. This is my story. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's absolutely my story. So I've got something to offer.
Yes. So that was what I meant. So this is your story. This is the way which you have covered.
Mm,
Maybe have not completed yet,
no.
but this is the way where which you are going
Hmm.
yourself, and
Hmm.
you're inviting men there. So you see that this is what we all need. When God put this into my heart,
Hmm.
or better, I would say better, he showed me myself that I needed to change. The same as you. And I saw that there was nowhere I could go. There's no source where I could get this information, or um, with this wisdom how to become a man. And that was actually my second question to you. So how a man could know that he is a man, or that he he became a man. He is not a child anymore. He's not a boy anymore. So he is a grown-up man. He's a real man. And how is it possible?
That is, it's a brilliant question. I think it's only possible when you have a
Hmm.
vision for what a man is. You have to have a vision for it, and I think many don't have a vision for it. You have to
Yeah.
discover what it is. You have to discover things in yourself that you did not know were there, and all of those little
Hmm.
discoveries are leading you to becoming what you have determined in your heart you want to become. And then somewhere along that journey, I mean, it's essential that you've got somebody that's walking you through it, and then at some point says, you're a man. You're not complete, you're still in process, but
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
someone that you love, that you trust, that you look up to, and that emulates that vision of manhood
Hmm.
that you've set before you. In fact, your vision of manhood might even come from a man, and maybe that's the man that speaks this into you. It's meant to be a father. But
Hmm.
unfortunately, we've got a culture filled with fathers who were never given the vision themselves.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
so many would want to become a man, a really good man, but they've never
Hmm.
even told that it's possible. So what's important? I think you need first a vision, because God says without a vision, the people cast off
Hmm.
restraint. Without a divine revelation, they perish.
Yeah.
And a man
Yep.
needs a
Yep.
vision from like the age of whatever, 8, 9, 10 years old. And they're like, that's the kind of man that I want to become. They
Hmm.
need a journey where that
Okay.
unfolds and is discovered, and they need somebody to help them and eventually tell them you've arrived.
So I got it. There must be someone who will tell a young man that he is not a boy anymore, that he's a man, right?
Has to be. Has to be.
Okay. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, I agree. I agree. Because for me, it has been a problem. Maybe I'm still struggling, but when I was growing up, when I was a teenager and younger teenager, older teenager, that's been a big, big issue for me because, um as you just said, my father uh, was not aware or did not know how to do this, how to even how to talk with me about girls, how to talk with me about things of life, how to talk with me about manhood or masculinity
Right.
or just my identity. So
Yeah.
we didn't have any conversations like that. And the worst thing was that I thought that it was that is the way it is supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
because that was the only reality. So I had to look for it everywhere else, to look for it my friends, to look for it in the TV, at the movies, and everywhere. And of course, I didn't find any real answer. So there was no point at the time when I was growing up that I realized, okay, I used to be a boy, but now I'm grown up. Now I'm a man. Now I have all these rights and responsibilities of the grown up man.
Yeah.
Even when I got married, even when I had my first son, I felt like I was a boy
Yeah.
who accidentally got all that
Right.
and didn't know what to do with this, how to manage with that, how to deal with my wife, how to make her happy, and how to raise my son, and what can I give to him if I don't have it myself. So that was a big, big, big issue, and which led me to dig deep in it and to search for the answers for me as a
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
because I realized that, well, okay, my age is not a boy's age anymore,
Right. Right.
and I kind of stuck in childhood.
Yeah.
So I must do something with that.
Yeah.
So, and this is how God just pushed me there, that and showed me that if I need if I needed to be served as a man there, and then I'm not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the men around, they are just like me. Do you see any other major problem of men today? So what is if the, is this what we have just discussed? Is this the main problem of manhood, or is there anything else, which is mm, which is something where men fail all the time, or which kind of undermines true masculinity?
I believe this is the root of all problems, actually. God offers a window to see the problem at the family level,
Mm-hmm.
at the cultural level, and at the world level, and
Yeah.
even over the entire scope of human history. You can
Mm-hmm.
see that from the biblical point of view, you can look at the beginning of the story and you can see what God's intentions were from the very beginning. Genesis 1, 2, and 3. It's,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
people argue over it, and, is it scientific? Is it philosophical? Is it this? Is it that? I don't know the answers to all those things.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody can create some great arguments, but what I do see now more than ever is in the way that the Lord of the Rings, in the way that Star Wars, in the way that Gladiator, in the way that Braveheart is simply the crafting of a story that somehow mythically can tell and evoke something that is deep and eternal in the heart of a
Yeah.
man, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Genesis 1, 2, and 3 actually does that. If you can just overlook the familiarity with it, you just think it's so simple. No, it's actually the most complex piece of poetry and literature that you
Yeah.
can possibly digest. And I would just encourage anybody, everybody to begin looking at it and asking God, give me eyes to see this in a new way. But the reality is the beginning of the story, as God proposed, who knows? There's probably 1,000 other details that God just said, those weren't essential to my
Mm-hmm.
communicating to humanity what it needs to know. What it needs to know is that I created man in my image to be my image bearer, which means that he's glorious, he's a craftsman, he's meant to rule, and
Mm-hmm.
that there are two ways that that man can move through the
Mm-hmm.
world. And that's represented poetically by two trees. One of them is that you live in deep harmony with me. You live in deep connection with me. You let
Yep.
me be God, and then I use you to bring incredible good and glory. It's basically, if you were to look at that picture, you would realize that, okay, well, if that's the case, and if I rely on God in that picture in the garden, I am not required to provide for myself. I'm not required to protect myself. And it's not up to me to come up with a plan for my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because in that poetic image of a man dependent on God, God takes care of those three things.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you've got on the other tree a man who tries to chart the world by himself. So what you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing in the garden is that day by day, you have a father and you have a son, and Adam is his son. If you look, I believe it's in the book of
Yeah.
Matthew, the chronology in the very beginning, like they're kind
Mm-hmm.
of tracing the lineage of Jesus, and it goes all the way back. And he begat, he begat, he begat, he begat, he begat, he begat, and Adam, the
Mm-hmm.
son of God.
Yeah.
We were meant to be sons, meant to be initiated. And so you think of a world, you think of a culture, you think of a city, you think of a family and a household where a man
Mm-hmm.
has not been fathered and is not living in union and partnership with God. That's that's that's
Mm-hmm.
what we were made for, right? So
Yeah.
this pandemic that we're experiencing, which is
Mm-hmm.
flushing out all of our fears, this
Yeah.
pandemic is nothing, absolutely nothing compared to the pandemic of a man living as if life is completely up to him.
Oh
That's where
yeah.
all the pain, that's where the anger comes in, that's where men get checked out. It's just all across the globe, there's a survival strategy for a man who feels like there's nobody here to tell me who I am. There's nobody here to father me. There's nobody here to instruct me. Life's up to me. Screw this.
Hmm.
I'm just going to check out, or I'm going to get aggressive, or I'm going to make tons of money. It's just one way after another that a man tries to make it through life, right? And in the process, we
Yeah.
run over our children, we run over our wives, we look in the mirror and we hate ourselves. Man, depression, anxiety, they're at an all-time high. The United States of America, where I
Mm-hmm.
live, I think it's the wealthiest nation in the world, and yet it's the most unhappy. If you were to look at all these
Mm-hmm.
statistics side by side, it's crushing. We also have the most single parent families
Yep.
of any nation in the entire world. What does that mean? That means fathers gave up. Why did they give up? What's behind that? It's because they weren't
Mm-hmm.
fathered. It's because they weren't initiated, and they don't know what they had. They have what it takes, and so they bail when things get hard. So
Mm-hmm.
I think all the other problems in the world all are really deeply rooted in the fact that I don't have a father. And it could all be answered by this
Yeah.
question.
So this is a pandemic of fatherlessness
Yes.
in the world, and it's been here for thousands of years,
Right.
not just if a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. You know, here in Norway, it's you can see it also. You can see it how it's destroying the nation, because fathers do not know who they are, and the whole society tells them that you are no you're no difference of the mother. Even change the when you fill official papers and you have to put your father's name and mother's name there, they don't have these words, father or mother. They have parent one, parent two. So they don't want to use these words, and just to eliminate the whole institution of family and fatherhood. And of course that bears fruit, and bears a lot of fruit. And people, Norway is also uh, a very prosperous country, but the suicide level is, I think it's the highest in the world, or close to that. So people take their own lives, especially men, because they don't know why they're here, what they're doing, if there are any purpose or any journey for them. And so that's a national disaster here.
Yeah. Solomon
So
said, without a vision, the people perish. And I was describing more kind of
yeah,
a spiritual perishing, just something inside the heart of a man that dies and gives up.
yeah, yeah,
But you're
yeah.
actually talking about men who take that spiritual death and just say, let's just finish the whole deal. Come on,
Mm-hmm.
let's put a close to this.
Yeah. Yes.
Physical death as well.
And Russia is probably one of the most fatherless countries in the world. After all these wars, World War I, World War II, the Revolution, Civil War, and everything, so the fathers were exterminated. Men were killed, literally, physically. So people just do not know what it means to be a man, what it means to be a father, what it does it does it mean anything? Does it mean responsibility? Does it mean any special role in the family? Does it mean what does it mean after all?
I would love to hear more about that. Maybe that's another topic, because I know there's a huge history of assault on the masculine soul of men in Russia. But it fascinates me that in Russia, people refer to the nation as Mother Russia.
Yeah.
I'm curious if
Yes.
you could just, where does that come from? And then there's this uber masculine leadership image where it just seems like Russia tends to choose these uber masculine leaders like Putin, and having
Mm-hmm.
been over there in Russia with you, like, there's a little bit of humility that seems to be required of leaders here over in America, but like that super, rugged, I don't know if rugged's the right word, but uber masculine image is
Yeah.
celebrated on t-shirts and everything, so it's just a very different way of thinking.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Mother Russia that
Uh,
always elects this uber macho, like, it's like, we need a father and the mother. That's what I feel like the culture is saying, while
yeah.
saying no at the same time. What's behind that?
Well, the first question about Mother Russia, I think this is a question of language, the issue of language, because Russian language has genders, and all words are divided in three groups: masculine, feminine, and middle gender. And the words like country, land, uh, soil, all these words are of feminine gender.
Yeah.
So when you say my country, Russia, you always say it in feminine gender. So Mother Russia kind of comes
Mm.
naturally.
Mm.
And what about this super macho cult of for men? I think this is a more complicated. This requires more complicated, long
Yeah.
answer. But in a couple of words, this is something men want to use to compensate or to medicate what they are lacking. So they don't have this inside, this self-assurance that I am a man.
Mm-hmm.
I know it. I don't have to prove it to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I know what it is. I know what it means to me. I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going. I know that I have what it takes. And since they don't have it, most of the men, they don't have it. So what men do when they are not sure, they just want to build something around. They want to build an image
Yeah.
that they have what it takes, that they
Mm.
know who they are, that they are what they look like.
Mm.
And this is all just kind of show,
Mm.
big show, like this, like this fig tree leaf which Adam made for
Mm-hmm.
himself, just to hide that he was naked.
So like a whole nation is using its leader as a fig leaf.
Yeah, it's leader. It's not only about the president or the leader.
Right.
It's the whole culture. It's about the masculinity of a whole culture.
Mm.
Uh, of course, there are some men who don't care, of course, but many men who want to do something, or they want to break through, and they understand they don't have it. They try to build this image
Mm.
and to try to make everybody believe that they are the way they look.
Right.
So that's what I think.
It's over here, kind of the equivalent in the United States would be um, insecure men getting pickup trucks
Yeah,
who
yeah,
don't use them, you know,
mm,
or
yeah.
a teenage boy who lives in a nice house, you know, on a small lot and has never had any real trouble or hardship in his life listening to violent rap music. It just
Mm,
makes him feel strong and powerful, you know,
yeah.
in a way.
Is there any difference between a man and a woman?
It's such a ridiculous question. You know, I actually had a podcast with John Eldridge, who's just so good at this. I love learning, continuing to learn from him. And he said this, which has been really helpful. Men and women are both guilty of sin.
Mm-hmm.
They're both guilty of bringing they're particularly gifted at bringing a particular kind of brokenness into the world. Okay.
Yeah.
We don't like to say that, but when a hurting world looks at their situation and their brokenness and they say, where did this come from? And then they can look at uh, a problem. What they want to do is they want to put things into boxes and they want to fix them. And that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense, right? But when you look at a society, and let's just say there's a very real problem that has existed and still exists where a gender is looked down upon.
Mm-hmm.
So what you can do is say, well, who's at fault? Boom. You look over at this one. the very fact that any gender is under assault is evidence that there's a difference between the genders.
Yeah, that's so true.
Right?
Yeah.
If they were all the same, then you would be lock, stock, and barrel saying, hey, everybody,
Hmm.
quit talking with a deep voice, or I don't know, whatever it is, right? But that's not the
Yeah.
case. You have to
Hmm.
isolate a gender and say, you shouldn't be like that. So what we are so guilty of is looking at masculinity, and you can focus on one of two things, or femininity and focus on one of two things. You can focus on um, the dignity of a man, or you can focus on the brokenness of a man. By virtue
Hmm.
of what a man is by
Hmm.
nature, created in the image of God, when he's at his best, he looks amazing. When he's at his worst, he's horrifying. And
Yeah.
so, what societies are trying to do is fix the problem by focusing not on the dignity side and inviting masculinity up into that as the fix for a culture. It's pointing the finger and accusing and trying to castrate man so that they don't bring their worst, right? It's just trying to fix
Hmm.
the problem in the wrong
Yeah.
way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I know you're asking, is there a difference between the two? Down to the cellular level, every single cell in the body, the things that they love. Come on. It's a ridiculous question. John asked a similar question to John on that podcast, and he said, look, another great way to just let the question answer itself is if you gave men and women, if you gave them $100, watch how they spend it.
Hmm.
If you gave them a week to do whatever they wanted, watch how they spend it. You would
Hmm.
quickly find that what people thought where everybody's the same, boom. Men and women will spend money differently, spend time differently,
Oh
all
yeah.
their assets, totally. Proves the point.
Hmm.
I don't care how much you try and ingratiate them and try and uh, smudge out the titles Mr. and Mrs., husband and wife,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
man and woman,
Oh,
doesn't matter. It will
mother, mother.
it,
Yeah.
it will always sift out.
So, well, you know, I would love to talk for hours.
Yeah, this would
No,
be good.
but we're limited in time, and maybe we could continue the conversation.
Would love to. There's a lot to talk about for sure.
Yes, there are many, many topics to discuss, and now we kind of uh, try to surface everything or
Mhm.
many things in this short time. But maybe next time we can talk about some particular issues.
It's good. Well, I love what you're doing. Just love it. You're a light, and you've been really important in helping me trust God in the way
Hmm.
that you for years have been trusting God and living in a way that most Americans couldn't even fathom. Just trusting God day by day, courageously
Hmm.
bringing the message to a population of people that are so unfamiliar with this, like you've been saying, whether you're in Norway or in Russia. um,
Hmm.
Masculinity is a clear picture of masculinity as it was seen in a healthy way is so far in the past in history that men have really kind of forgotten what it looks like.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
more so than here in the United States, it's kind of only in the last few years been forgotten or lost, and there are people who are clinging to it, and men like you and me that are just
Hmm.
really set free by the picture of authentic masculinity. Anyways, I honor you, what you're doing, love what you're doing, and thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Okay, we made it.
We got it. It's awesome. So worth it. Harder getting up here. Actually, it wasn't that bad.